Mike, today, straight from the D-line factory, NC State, we got Alim McNeill today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Being a little bit facetious there, obviously, with the D-line factory. That was something that we read in an article earlier today, and that's just funny. Outside of Bradley Chubb and maybe B.J. Hill, I don't know who else they've been producing, but they got Alim McNeill, right? So no, hopping right into the production here for Alim. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Is what we would have said if he had good numbers, but he really didn't here in 2020. Mike, what were your thoughts here on the 6 solo tackles, 1 sack? What's up with Alim? Because he did do well his freshman and sophomore year, right? I can't rip on him too hard, but what happened in this last season? I was gonna say senior season, this junior season here at NC State.
Yeah, honestly, not a whole bunch there. Okay, I know we a couple times I talked about sometimes comparing D tackle numbers comparative to linebackers, safeties. It's kind of a hard comparison. A lot of the difference they make doesn't show up on the stats, but like we still have to consider stats. That is, it's not the end all be all, but when you see 6 solo tackles for 11 games, you scratch your head a little bit. And watching the film, I scratched my head a little bit. And we'll get more into it. I'm not trying to um, just crap on the man. Like there were some qualities that I liked watching on film, but making plays was not one of them, and I think this shows.
Well, and obviously, if you're drafting a nose tackle, because he is a pure nose tackle, no question. You don't necessarily draft them to make a ton of tackles or get a ton of sacks. But like, I was just looking at guys historically for reference. So like Danny Shelton, when he came out, his senior season had like 55 solo tackles, or even Derek Nottie, who was, I believe, a third-round player there for Kansas City. He had like 22 solo tackles. So it was just kind of interesting seeing that sort of regression, I guess you could say, from that sophomore junior year and comparing it to other guys who were kind of in that same round conversation as Alim. So no, as we get into my observations for him, you're going to see a lot of things that you might not agree with if you're a McNeill fan. Obviously, I thought his ability to anchor and just that strength and power at the point of attack, I thought that was great. That was by far his best quality. This man's hands are insane, and when he's able to get them in your chest, you are not driving him backwards by any means. Thank you for the visual representation there, Mike. In terms of his pass rush ability, I think it's minimal. I really do. I mean, the only way he's really getting wins is if he really beats you with those hands, you fly out of the play, and then hopefully the QB holds long enough for him to get back there into the backfield, because he just doesn't have the explosiveness and quickness, in my opinion at least, to really secure and finish those plays. I know that's somewhere that a lot of people disagree with me. They say the explosive Alim McNeill. That seems to be an epithet attached with his name everywhere you look. And I get that he used to be a running back in high school, played some linebacker. He was a great baseball player, but I don't think that the 340-pound Alim McNeill, at least in my opinion, is all that explosive when it comes to making plays. I think that, a lot of that we could question why it is. You could say, is it the weight? One thing I brought up with Mike, kind of jokingly, kind of not, is could it be his stance? I don't know if people have really looked at his stance, but his feet are like really far under his butt. It's probably the most narrow stance that I've seen somebody have. And the problem is with that is there's no real forward momentum. Obviously, if you have no weight on your hands, then you can easily shoot your hands quick. And I think that's how he wins a lot of matchups. But he doesn't have that sort of forward propulsion, in my opinion, because the fact that he's starting so far underneath himself, if that makes any sense at all. So, Mike, what were your kind of thoughts here on the overall grade? Obviously, a little bit lower than kind of the consensus, it seems, but 69.75 for Alim. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think I'm probably right there with you, maybe a little bit higher in certain categories and probably a little bit lower in certain categories. One, explosiveness, first step. I think it might be a little bit higher, but at the same time, it wasn't good. I'd agree there. And I'm not even going to use the size as um, a reason he shouldn't be more like, shouldn't have more explosiveness, because we've seen players in the 340 range. Maybe 340 might be a little much, but like 330 that, say 340 range that have that explosiveness. One that comes off just the top of my mind would be Don Terry Poe, a guy that just for his size had had a really nice explosiveness as well as that strong first punch, and he definitely doesn't have that. Or a guy that really never performed in the next level, but watching film, Andrew Billings, a guy me and you were pretty high on when he came out of the draft. For his size, he just kind of was the first man off the line of scrimmage, and he was the first one downfield. And by no means does Aleem have that kind of explosiveness, at least not off the film we watched. So I think it's a little bit higher than 10, 0.75, but not a whole lot. Um, Pass rush ability. Um, I just didn't see a ton of it. I wish I did because again, he got off the line of scrimmage, got his hands up, right in the shoulder pads, but then he didn't do anything with it, and that was my problem with him. Is he did that on such a consistent basis? You saw that, and then you consistently seen him do nothing with it, whether it be disengage, make a play against the run, um, make a play in the pass, really, um, pressure the quarterback. Like he just never did. But he looked like he was in great position too. Like a lot of players we talk about, whether it be DNs or D tackles, where as soon as a guard, center, tackle gets their hands on him, they kind of just are out of the play. I can't think of many plays where I thought Alim was in bad position. There wasn't a ton. A couple times he had bad leverage and got pancaked, but for the most part, he had good position. He just didn't do anything with it. It kind of is mind boggling. Usually it just seems like it's a different kind of conversation we have. And he's just a little bit of a head scratcher.
No, I agree with that, no question. So I'll kind of shoot a question back at you then. If you think he is getting in good position and he has that explosiveness to get in a good position, do you think it's because they're kind of asking him to two gap? And do you think he'd be maybe better as a pure one tech where he can be more of that single gap penetrator? Do you think he'd be better there? Whereas here he's more so having to worry about both A gaps. What are your thoughts there?
Well, if they did use him as pure nose tackle, watching both A gaps, I don't think he did a great job. As I said, I don't think he did a great job disengaging. Just recognition of what was going on, being able to really see the play develop in front of him. So no, I think using him as a one tech is by far the better option. I think he can maybe use that get upfield a little bit more. Um, if they did try to use him as a pure nose tackle, I just wasn't super impressed. I don't know, and maybe it's something you can learn. I don't know. Just play recognition definitely was not there, at least off the film we watched. So I'd say putting him as a one tech, giving him an ability to use some of that explosiveness and maybe. But I wish at the same time I feel like there was opportunities for him to make a play in the past, or try to put some type of move together to get to the quarterback, and he just didn't. So maybe he would be. I don't know. He just really kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. But I'd say I'd try to put him as a one tech. I think it's a better fit.
No, and regarding, people might be confused if they're listening to this in terms of how you're saying he's so commonly in a good position, but you think he has a lower block recognition awareness. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that on almost every play, he does a great job shooting those hands, bench pressing guys off him, creating that separation, which is a great position to be in. But then from there, in terms of shedding and making a move off of that, you don't think that was really on film, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like the conversation you have with D line, offensive line is low man usually wins, and I think a lot of the times, and maybe it's just he's short, stout. He was the low man, got those hands in the shoulder pads, got away from his chest, and I just feel like a lot of players and Barmore, so another player we looked at, when he had that position, you've seen him make a play. He
Yes.
disengaged, and
Mhm.
whether he made a play downfield in the run or pressured the quarterback, if he got in that position, he made the play, but he didn't do it at a very consistent basis.
Whereas Aleem then is getting there almost every play, but he just can't finish at all.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
that's how I'm kind of looking at both of them. So I guess I don't know. It's kind of like we've watched a lot of D tackles. I can't say I've seen one that usually I just feel like the Barmore conversation is more kind of fluent to what we're talking about. Um, Especially with kind of bigger D tackles. Sometimes we've seen kind of like those hybrids the last couple years where it's a different story. But with those bigger true D tackles, um, usually what Aleem is good at, you don't see on film. It's the opposite. It's what
And
he's not good at. What you kind of see splashes of.
well, and I think it's really interesting too because okay, so say he was a running back in high school, like you, there's a big difference there between going from playing running back to being a 340-pound defensive tackle, right? And you'd think that there'd be some stops along the way where hey, maybe you're that undersized pass rusher, then maybe you put a little bit of weight on to help stop the run. But no, he's 340 pounds that he's clogging gaps. Well, I think that's where it makes him sort of unique in that sense because being newer to the position, you would expect that sort of technical hand placement wouldn't be his strong point. But I think we're certainly in agreement that it is. So in terms of then the overall grade, obviously, as you'll see, when you take the 69.75, add in the position premium for him being a defensive tackle, I have him at a 72.54, just below guys like Carlos Basham, Michael Carter. Mike, where are you in that conversation? I know you've talked previously about how you value edge a little bit more highly maybe than I would, but would you take Basham over McNeill, or is he right in that conversation there?
I think McNeill has a higher ceiling. I think from what we saw, if he could learn some of those characteristics, I think he's higher. So I think more for me, I'm probably taking over Michael Carter too, just based off position value there. So I think the conversation really is away McNeill for me, and I think away offers a higher ceiling. But I think actually, to be honest, Aleem also kind of like Jason away was the, you know, boomer boss prospect on in the edge category. I think Alim McNeill might be the boomer bust in the D tackle category. And I think actually all D tackles, especially this year, have a little bit of boomer bust. I haven't seen one that really sticks out of having a high floor. There, one that we might have coming up probably has the highest floor, at least just off watching some film, but we'll get there. But I think Lee McNeil shows he might be the biggest boomer bust here. I really do think so. If he could learn some of that, man, that AM placement, and I think that's something that translates well to the next level. Um, Being able to keep your low center of gravity and getting your hands um, in the shoulder pads. So I'm probably going Jason away, McNeil.
No, I don't necessarily think that you're wrong. I think he's definitely an intriguing guy. But with that being said, if you guys are intrigued by our channel and this video, obviously, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on McNeill? Do you have him as your defensive tackle 1, 2, 3? I've seen him in a lot of different places on people's big boards. So tell us where you are on him below, and then obviously subscribe to continue getting more videos like this in the future. So with that being said, I think we're mic'd up, and now we're mic'ing out. Peace, guys.
Dude.